The Prepper Podcast, Episode 14.
You've got to know whether or not their president's a crook.
The American people would never vote for socialism. He said, under the name of liberalism, the American people will adopt every fragment of the socialist program.
The Prepper Podcast is an up-to-date survival podcast based on military, wilderness, and modern-day survival and may be found at theprepperpodcast.com. I am Ken Jensen, and this is the podcast about everything survival. This is episode 14, and today I will be talking about non-perishable food items like canned food and give a plan for food storage made easy and low cost. Not only can it be cheap, it can actually save you money. This episode may be found at theprepperpodcast.com/014. Now, some real quick housekeeping. I want you guys to go and check me out on my Facebook page. That's you can easily get there. Just remember, theprepperpodcast.com/Facebook. Twitter at theprepperpodcast.com/Twitter. And you can also get me on Google+, theprepperpodcast.com/Google+, all written out. And you can do the same thing with LinkedIn and YouTube and Zello. Zello channel is like the walkie-talkie feature. I have a Zello channel. Just go to theprepperpodcast.com/Zello. Also, I'd like for everybody to remember that I have a podcast call-in line. No one has called in on it yet, and that's no worry. I mean, I have lots of content that I can bring up on this podcast, but I just wanted to let everybody know that I can make this podcast your podcast if you'll just call in to my call-in line, and that is 978-KNOWS-IT. All right, that will be on the show notes as well, in case you have trouble understanding that it's KNOWS-IT. KNOWSIT. And for those of you that don't have letters on your touchpad, it's 978-566-9748. All right? So go ahead and give me a call and give me all your questions, because that is what I want for this podcast. I would love to start answering you guys' questions, because I would love to make this your podcast. Now, remember last week, I told you guys that I had 800 listeners. Well, I looked back at the stats on the of the podcast that I was talking about, and believe it or not, I had over this time around, I had over 1,000 people download that podcast. Last week's podcast, at the time that I'm recording this, was around 500, but the week's not over. And I looked at the other one, and I didn't actually get to the 1,000 count until like a week later. So it looks like a lot of the people that listen to this stuff, they usually end up turning on iTunes or something like that and downloading the podcast, half a week later after I've, established this episode or whatever online. So that is really cool, though. We're at 1,000 listeners on each of the podcasts that I've been able to track now, and I think that's really cool. I really enjoy having everybody listen to me, and I just think of it this way. If I have 1,000 of you guys who are devoted to showing up and listening to me give a speech in like an auditorium, 1,000 every single week, all right, you're devoted to coming and listen to me for 30 minutes to an hour every single week. I think that's really cool. I don't take it lightly, and I really enjoy talking to you guys. All right, so now we're going to start our discussion. Now, I've already told you guys that I'm going to be talking about non-perishable food items like canned food and that I was going to give you a plan for the storage. Well, the plan that I'm going to give you, it involves a thing called copy canning, and I wanted to talk to you about what copy canning is. So we know that we already eat a certain amount of each type of food. It's obvious, or else we'd be dead. But copy canning is you take the canned foods and things like that you already have, and you go ahead and every time you buy a can or something like that at the supermarket or the grocery store, you go ahead and just get an extra can. That's all you're doing. You're just going ahead, you're getting an extra can, throwing it in the cart, and when you come home, you have 2 cans instead of 1, and you will use one when you normally would, and you will store 1. Now you have 1 there. Well, you go back to the supermarket, and you buy 2 of that can again, and you use the 1 that's already on your shelf, and put the 2 that you bought in storage, and for very little money, you now have 2 cans of stored food, non-perishable food, instead of 1 and instead of 0. So over time, it's almost like compounding interest. You can actually get more and more and more over time. And whenever you have enough, it's really cool because then you're like, all right, guys, I've got plenty of food right now. So if it's not on sale, I don't have to buy it. So now you can look at prices. You can look at the prices of your receipts and see how much things were. And then you can wait until the price is low. When the price is rock bottom, you can buy it up. But at first, I recommend copy canning because copy canning is easy, gradual, and doesn't take a lot of money. If you just want to go and buy a whole bunch of canned food and throw it on your shelves, then it's going to take a lot of money and it's going to be more difficult to do. So let's not do that. Let's do the copy canning. All right, so how am I going to get started in food storage? Well, like I said, there's copy canning. I'm going to break this down into 1 month, 2 month, and 3 month segments. And I'm not talking about the amount of time that it takes you to prep. I'm talking about the amount of time that that your food will be good for. So let's say, when you're done with each of these sections, with the 1 month section, you should have enough food that will cover you for 1 month or maybe a little more. Okay? All right. So for the 1 month, I want you to first go to the dollar store or go somewhere else and buy a 50-cent notebook. This 50-cent notebook is very important, but I want it to be a clean notebook. I don't want it to be scratch paper. I want you to grab it, and I want you to put it somewhere where you will see it every single day when you're grabbing food. I want you to see it, and I want you to use it. All right? I'm not telling you to write anything down in that notebook as far as what you're going to purchase, okay? Yeah, I know it's kind of tough, but you can save all your receipts in an envelope for that. And later on, you actually may want to do that. So I would recommend just starting that right now. Don't even worry about looking at your receipts right now. Just go ahead and start putting those receipts in an envelope. And later, whenever you're a little bit more mature in your prepping, then you can come back to that. But for now, I want you to get this notebook. And what that notebook's going to be is it's going to be either on your counter, it's going to be on a magnet attached to the front of your refrigerator, it's going to be right beside your pantry. I don't know where you're going to want to put it. Each person has their own favorite, but I would recommend putting it, I know where mine is. Mine is on the door of my refrigerator. Or at least it was until the kids pulled it down. I've got to get a new notebook and put that on the refrigerator because that is when I used it the most, is when it was on the refrigerator. I can't keep up with anything that gets put on the counter in the kitchen, so I don't do that. All right, so now you've got your notebook. What do I want you to do with that notebook? You're going to write down everything that you use. So when you use a spice, and you don't have to write down the specific quantity when it comes to small things. So what I mean is, if you use 1 can of tomatoes, then I want you to write down that you used 1 can of tomatoes. If you use 1 fresh tomato, I want you to write down that you used 1 fresh tomato. If you use a full cucumber, write down a full cucumber. But if you write down, or if you use like sage, you use 1 teaspoon of sage, it doesn't matter. you don't need to write down 1 teaspoon of sage, okay? Spices are pretty cheap, and they last for quite a while, so just write down sage. That way you know that you got to do sage. That's going to be one of those, it's more in the food preparation and the taste of the food than it is the food itself. So just go ahead and use quantities on the major food items, not on like the herbs and stuff like that. Okay? Now, let's go. We've written it down for at least 2 weeks. Now, I would recommend going up to a month. I don't think I told you this already, but I would recommend you going up to 1 month's time of writing stuff down. And I don't want you to start prepping or anything like that, okay? So, now, what I want you to do is I want you, after you've written stuff down for a month or 3 weeks or 2 weeks, you know, some people may be impatient and they want to start at the 2-week mark. That I understand that. But as soon as you're done with that, I would recommend you go to just calculate what you would use in a year's time. So if you use something maybe twice in a week, then that's going to end up being 104 times a year, right? There's 52 weeks in a year. So let's go ahead and say there's 104 of these cans of tomatoes that you're going to use in a year. Well, the shelf life of that food is probably a few years, so you can get 104 of those as your final number. But what I would recommend is you take the shelf life of the food. So let's say that you got some kind of beans that it's probably not even beans, but you got some type of, I don't know, pressed bread or something, you know, anything that's going to be like 6 months, maybe some food bars or something like that. And if it's only 6 months, well, let's say you got 104 in a year, right? Well, the food is only good for 6 months. So you're not going to want to stock up enough food now for the entire year. You're only going to really want enough for 6 months, because eventually things are going to start going bad on you. So you're going to need to go ahead and half that, right? Half of a year, 6 months. So instead of 104, you're going to get 52 of them. This is a 12-month weighted average of the stuff you're going to use. So you convert it into how much you're going to need over 12 months, and then you break it down based on how long its lifespan is, and you're going to come up with the number that you need, your final number that you need in your pantry. Now, if you had something that, you know, you used once a month and you know, it would last for 2 years, that's fine. You can work on the 1 year, or you can go ahead and knock your number over to the 2-year mark. So let's say you use it once a month. That's going to be 12 in a year, but it's got a lifespan of 2 years. If it's got a lifespan of 2 years, well, then you can get 24 of them if you want. Now, what about people who don't want commercially canned food? Well, I recommend that you learn how to can. I recommend that you learn food storage. But this particular podcast is mostly on getting people started. I want you to eat the foods and store the foods I want you to eat what you store what you eat. I'm not trying to change your diet right now. I'm trying to get you at least something that is going to get you through tough times when food is scarce, okay? So I understand that what you're going to end up getting in this little amount of time is going to be less than the ideal organic, fair trade, nutritional food that you want. But you probably need to grow a garden and learn how to can your own food if you want that stuff. But this is just to get you started. So let's continue. This should give, once you've got all the stuff that's on your list, once you have about a year's worth of this stuff, you actually are going to probably have a month or two of food. And that's because right now we're skipping fillers. We don't have pasta. We don't have beans. We don't have any of this stuff, okay? I want you to focus on the main foods, not any of the extras and not any of the fillers. I want you to get the things that are going to give you vitamins and nutrients with the calories. So green beans over rice. I want you to have pineapple over, I want you to have pineapple instead of pasta. It's just the stuff that's going to give you the highest nutritional return for what you're eating. So that's what we're focusing on right now, because that's the stuff that's going to help you the most when food is scarce. So the next thing, back to what I was saying, it gives you a month or two of food because you don't have all these fillers. All right, so when you get done with this, you can actually start saving money. Like I already said, you can actually start saving money because you can now wait until the grocery store has a sale on what's in your pantry. So you can look for coupons and stuff like that, and you can have them organized. You can be that extreme couponer or whatever you want to do. A lot of preppers, believe it or not, have become extreme couponers because they have the ability to use a stockpile, and a lot of extreme couponers have by default become some sort of prepper even though they don't know it. And it's because they always have this big store of things, and they go through that while they're waiting on the next big deal. So you can actually save a lot of money on food once you start doing this. So now that you have a month or two, I'm going to say the 1 month mark, right? Because I told you I'm going to do this in 1, 2, and 3 month segments. So now we're at the 1 month mark. So now what do we do to get to the 2 month mark? Well, we come back to all those fillers, right? The pasta, the rice, the beans, and the potatoes, things that are high in calorie content, maybe lower in vitamin nutrients and stuff, but things that are going to fill your gut up. These aren't the most nutritional foods, right? But they are a survival cache of food. That's what we're looking for. All right. So I still recommend getting things like canned beans and canned potatoes. And the reason why I recommend canned beans and canned potatoes over getting dried beans or regular potatoes, well, for one, regular potatoes don't last very long. And in the dry beans, they actually will last quite a while, but they take a lot of energy and a lot of soaking and things like that in order to prepare them. What we want is we want to give you some survival food that takes very little time that you could heat up. Now, we don't want to heat up a bunch of cans of food in the can, because it's bad for you. But, in a crunch, you could heat up cans of food in the can with a small fire underneath. That's a possibility. So it's a good thing to know, and it's a good thing to have. What we need to do is stick with the canned beans and potatoes, okay? Stick with those. It takes a lot less energy to heat them up. And energy is a highly valued necessity whenever you're in a survival situation. Additional non-perishable items, you can grab this other stuff. This is stuff that I really didn't want on the first list. It's going to be things like an extra jar of spaghetti sauce for the pasta, or some pesto for your noodles or the sandwiches that you want to make. You can get some different breads and stuff that are going to last a long time. You figure out how to store them properly. They can last you a while, but I would actually recommend just keeping the flours and stuff like that to make the bread. Now, this is where you're going to get all your pastas, rice, beans, potatoes, flours, and all that. So you have other things that aren't actual food items, but they are valuable items to go with the fillers. You may want some salsa to go in your rice and beans. You may want that pesto. So this is where we're going to get all of that additional non-perishable food, okay? You should still be logging all of your consumption during this time, and kind of thinking about your year's worth of fillers by the consumption that you've logged. All right, and we're going to do the weighted average again to get to figure out what our year's worth of fillers is going to be. Now this, along with your canned foods, is going to give you at least a 2-month supply, and it's probably, to be honest with you, going to be about 3 or 4. But remember, you may think that you have that much food, but when friends and family come over, you probably don't have that much food. This is just a little bonus. I would recommend at the very beginning, go ahead and get a couple of those 5-pound bags of rice and pastas and stuff like that. The real cheap filler food that you really don't need to be having, but I would take it. I would put some oxygen absorbers in a bucket with it and just get rid of all the oxygen in the bucket and have some long-term storage for all these filler products. And the reason why I say it is this is not for you. This is for your friends and family that need to have your food, because you don't want to take away from your immediate family to give to everybody else. So you can have compassion now on these people. Give them food that will allow them to sustain life and get to the next stage, and for them to learn to survive and things like that. But it's not taking away from your main food. That was just a little bonus. It's not even in my show notes, but it was just something that I was thinking of. Let's move on to the 3-month mark. Now, like I said, we've got 2 months supply, probably 3 or 4. Now, 3 months. We're going to start looking into some higher quality foods. We want to take, let's think high quality, okay? The main high quality foods that we're going to have that are non-perishable are going to be freeze-dried items. Freeze-dried items way outlast all of the dried stuff. Freeze-dried grapes last a lot longer than raisins. That's just the way it is. And believe it or not, in the let's see if I say this right. I'm not even looking at the word, but lyophilization process, I think that's the right word. In that process, you actually maintain a lot more vitamins than if you were just to dry something. So when you add water to your freeze-dried food, you're going to get something very similar to what it originally was. It's not going to be perfect, but a lot of freeze-dried foods are organic, and they are a lot of them are preservative-free, and they last for a long time. I think many of them are like 5 to 15 years, okay? So think about that, 5 to 15 years. So now you can really get some high-quality stuff, and it's going to last you more than canned food would. Now, the companies that give you freeze-dried food, they also will create ready-made meals, okay? And actually, I believe that's a company, ReadyMadeMeals.com. That's a little shout-out for you, Ready Made Meals. They are not a sponsor of mine. It was just something that popped into my head when I said it. But a lot of them make the pre-prepared meals that all you got to do is add water and heat it up in a skillet. Well, the thing is they have to open up all the packaging and stuff like that to make these meals, and then they repackage it, and when they repackage it, you've already broken the seal and let in a little moisture with it, and they usually only last about 18 months. A lot of them are still organic and stuff like that, but they're going to add preservatives to it so that it will stay for 18 months. So just remember that. If you're going freeze-dried, you're best off to get pantry cans and the number 10 cans, okay? Pantry cans and number 10 cans. Pantry cans are just slightly bigger than a can of tomato soup. You really won't have to use a whole lot of heat or anything, so they're going to take a little bit of water, but then they don't take a whole lot of heat in order to heat this food up. Most of the stuff lacks any real bacteria or anything in it due to the freeze-drying process. So a lot of times you can eat this stuff. Well, every single can of freeze-dried food I've had, you are allowed to eat it straight out of the can. Now, most people want to cook it because it'll make it taste better. After you've done this, getting your freeze-dried food, and that's really going to be to your discretion of what you want to do, but after you do this, it should cover most of the things that you couldn't get for the canning and the filler stuff. All right, you can get all kinds of stuff when it comes to freeze-dried food. I mean, you can get ground beef that's pre-cooked, stuffed in a can, and you can actually pull it out of the can and eat it without adding any water to it, and it tastes fine. It doesn't taste anything like ground beef, but when you add water to it, it tastes like ground beef. And I've never eaten anything in one of these cans that doesn't taste pretty darn good straight out of the can. That's another thing. As you guys can tell, I kind of like freeze-dried food. I just don't have a lot of it because I prefer to do things more self-sufficiently. Now, it's going to cover a lot of the foods that we couldn't get before, or the foods that we just couldn't bring ourselves to get in a can. All right, like meat. Some people just will not do meat in a can. Now, when it comes to things like bologna and Spam and potted meat, I understand because that crap is nasty. Now, a lot of the parts that go into that would go into things that I would eat, though. It's just that processed meat is just nasty. There's so much preservatives and so much random stuff in there that I wouldn't touch it. But you can get the chicken, the beef, things like that. Although I would eat canned chicken. Canned chicken doesn't taste bad at all. You can eat beef cubes and things, so you can make stewed beef and all this other stuff. And it works really good. And like I said, it's a higher quality food. It's kind of expensive, but you're now to the point where you can get into some of that foods because you're saving money on all your canned food items and stuff like that. All right, so you can get yourself a good 3-month supply where everyone is enjoying their meals instead of just sitting down and eating rice and beans and everything. You know, your children don't want to just sit there and eat rice and beans. Man, give them some good breakfast. Give them some eggs, some scrambled eggs and some buttered toast and some sausage. For lunch, go ahead and give them a nice sandwich with a chicken breast on it and some pesto sauce. And for dinner, go ahead and, hook them up with some spaghetti with meat sauce and garlic bread or something like that. You're in survival mode. Make things enjoyable for yourselves. You want everybody to enjoy their meals. You don't want them stuck on rice and beans the whole time. That's where people fail. They all say, "Oh, I'm the man of the house and I provide the food, so they're going to eat whatever I tell them they're going to eat." Well, I say that's freaking stupid because your family wants good food and everybody's already high stressed. So why are you going to do that? Go ahead, give them good freaking food so that they can enjoy life a little bit. They can have some finer things whenever they're stuck in survival mode. Don't be this freaking chauvinistic, pig-headed retard and give them some good food. I'm sorry. I digress. All right. So we want to let me get my thoughts together. After we go through this 3-month thing, now we think we have 3 months worth of food. Well, guess what? This whole time, we've been taking notes about the things we've been using, not the things we've been buying. But like I said, I would recommend you guys throwing that stuff in an envelope because later on, beyond the scope of this, but later on, you'll probably want to go back and look at those. And another great thing for keeping those receipts, I know I keep taking tangents, but I have good things flowing into my head, so I want to get them out to you guys. I don't want to keep any information away from you. So whenever you are going to purchase things, well, now you have something to figure out and to study and look at what the pricing of things are. And over 6 months, you'll see the price go up and stuff like that. You'll understand the inflation of food, and you'll understand when you're getting a good deal on something, stuff like that. That is the main reasons why I tell you to keep your receipts, but that is not part of this prepping. This prepping is mostly about just having your month's worth of food. So when you're done with your 3 months worth of food, now you're going to go right back to your notebook. You're going to look through, and you're going to get your 12-month weighted average again. Okay? You're going to figure that out. Then you're going to inventory what you have, and if you feel that you're missing something, or you feel, that you just don't have something, or that you even have too much of something, I wouldn't recommend getting rid of things. But if you don't have enough of something, then go ahead and add that to the list, and start stocking up on that. So that's pretty much my plan for how to get a good startup survival cache of food. But now I'm going to talk about how you're, after you've stocked up on your food, how are you going to start using that food when it's needed? Because you're used to eating fresh vegetables, steamed broccoli, things like that you're probably just not going to get from this food that you have saved. But like I said, you can find things to, let me think here. You can find things that will, a non-perishable replacement. That's the word I'm looking for. I'm so sorry about that. You're going to have a non-perishable replacement for a lot of the perishable things that you eat. So I'm going to tell you, let's just say, a 2-day example of ways that you're going to use non-perishable items to make meals fairly equivalent to what you would do with the perishable stuff. We're going to think about things in terms of survival instead of just let's look what we got in the pantry and let's throw something together. All right, this is a 2-day example. So let's say on Sunday you want to have breakfast, a bowl of oatmeal with cinnamon and honey. Now, I love oatmeal with cinnamon and honey, by the way. I do it all the time, or I used to do it all the time. Now I'm a little bit more of a primitive diet, but I really do like oatmeal with cinnamon and honey. And so a bowl of oatmeal with cinnamon and honey and a glass of milk, that's your normal breakfast on that Sunday. And then lunch on Sunday is peanut butter and honey sandwich. And then dinner on Sunday, you do, let's say, fried chicken, fresh garden fresh green beans, steamed or whatever, and mashed potatoes. Now on Monday, you're going to have homemade pancakes and maple syrup for breakfast. Lunch is going to be peanut butter and honey sandwich again. And dinner is going to be spaghetti and meat sauce. So now I'm going to go through what you used on those days and tell you kind of what you can use instead. On Sunday, that morning with the oatmeal, you used old-fashioned oats. Well, those, I agree, are definitely the best, but your stockpile could be instant. All right, and it's not because there's anything better with the instant. Believe it or not, I don't want the instant oats. I'm telling you this, but I do not. In this case, I don't practice what I preach. I have a bunch of regular oats. I don't have instant oats, but you can replace your old-fashioned oats with instant or quick oats, flavored or non-flavored, because it uses less energy to make it. Cinnamon. You can get 2 bottles of cinnamon next time you buy it, because cinnamon keeps for a pretty good amount of time. Peanut butter. It also keeps for really good, you had the oatmeal, then the sandwich. So peanut butter, it's it stocks for quite some time, so you can just get an extra tub of peanut butter. That'll work. Honey. Get an extra jar of honey whenever you go to the store. Honey will actually keep almost indefinitely. Now, honey will crystallize over time, and the funny thing is there's nothing wrong with honey that is crystallized. That's the crazy thing. Believe it or not, honey is antibacterial. Now, that's kind of cool. It's antibacterial. It will crystallize, but it crystallizes because it is losing water. One thing that you can do with the honey to keep it from it's natural that it crystallizes like that. One thing you do is you can melt your honey back down, but you're going to want to I don't remember the temperature. I'll be honest with you guys, I don't remember the temperature, but there's a low temperature, maybe 140 degrees, something like that you just put your honey in it, and you can melt it a little bit. You definitely don't want your water boiling, and you definitely don't want to boil your honey. It's gonna reverse the crystallization in your honey, so it'll keep almost indefinitely. So you can just get an extra jar of that. Now for the chicken, you're not gonna have fried chicken like you would have, but you can get a couple cans of the canned chicken. You can pan fry that or grill it or something like that, or throw it in some kind of little casserole or soup. Okay? The fresh green beans. You can get a couple cans of canned green beans, which aren't quite as good, but it is a decent emergency substitute. And then instead of I don't know if I told you this, but I had mashed potatoes as one of the things. Yep, I said mashed potatoes, I think. Get some instant mashed potatoes. They keep for a really long time, and they're very quick to make. So on Monday, you used eggs, milk, flour, and other things, for pancakes. Well, you can get instant eggs, powdered eggs. You can get the Just Add Water pancake mix. That's pretty good stuff. It keeps for a long time. And if you keep them in something without oxygen, it'll keep for a really long time. Now you're just adding water, and the kids are getting their pancakes and syrup. Now, with the syrup that you use, most people are using crappy syrup, and it's actually using fenugreek for the maple flavor. But if you have maple syrup, it'll keep for a really long time. And I don't know how long the fenugreek stuff keeps for. The Mrs. Buttersworth maple syrup or whatever. That stuff is all fenugreek, believe it or not. And which is in itself is not a bad thing. But it's just all the other crap that they add to the syrup to make it taste maple flavored that just makes it awful. But syrup will keep for a long time, so just buy an extra one at the store. Like I said before, the peanut butter and honey will keep for a long time. Spaghetti also keeps well, so you just buy an extra box at the store. That's what you do in your second month anyways, or when you're on your second month cycle. So it keeps well, buy an extra box. The hamburger, tomato, and et cetera, for the sauce. Buy the dried packets of spaghetti sauce to store for long-term storage, or you can get the spaghetti sauce in a jar. But the dried packets will store longer, and they will not. The glass bottle will not break in a dried packet of spaghetti sauce. But if you prefer, you can get the jar of spaghetti sauce. That's fine too. And then the hamburger, you can go with freeze-dried stuff, and then you can also get freeze-dried, different freeze-dried vegetables. And then obviously you can can your own vegetables to make everything where you can utilize it. So that's pretty much the end of this, guys. I wanted to make sure that you knew a good method for storing food. All right, so that you can eat what you store and store what you eat. And I hope you really enjoyed that method, and I hope that it's a very actionable method that you can go out today, get that notepad, start taking that stuff down, and just get it done, okay? That was the whole purpose, and I try to make things very actionable. I mean, my show notes are they're in an outline because I'm a very linear thinker. I think straight down the line. I want to know steps, and I want to know how to do it, things like that. I know that there are lots of things that it depends. I understand that. But it's important that if I can, I'm going to give you steps that you can take, and then you take my steps and you make them your own. I hope that I did that for you guys today, and I really, really hope that you'll leave comments in the show notes letting me know if my steps have been actionable for you and if you think that you'll be able to do this. I really want you to go to theprepperpodcast.com/014 and leave comments in the show notes. All right, so I have a couple call to actions for you guys. All right, the first call to action is get yourself that notebook. Start logging what you use, and then write on your calendar in a month, okay? So today, the day that this comes out will be, let's see here. The day that this comes out will probably be the 10th. January 10th, 2014 is when this will probably come out. Okay? So, in a month, and that's going to be February 10th, 2014, I want you to have a notice on your calendar to tell you to begin your averaging and begin buying your canned foods. Okay? That's my call to action for you. Get a notebook, start logging what you use, and write on your calendar in a month to begin your averaging and begin buying. All right. The second call to action that I have for you is, once again, at theprepperpodcast.com/014. Click at the bottom. You'll see I have a thing that says a lot of people like this page, and these are some people that you know that like this page. Go ahead and click the like button at the bottom of the post. Okay? Just at the bottom of today's show notes, click the like button at the bottom. All right? And if you've already done that, if you've already liked my page, then click the share button. Share that sucker. All right? Go ahead and tell everybody why you like the Prepper Podcast. Okay? I really appreciate you guys listening in. I hope that I did better this week than last week. I think last week ran kind of long. I hope that you enjoyed this podcast a lot. And I really hope that you'll continue to listen. And I want you to share this thing with everybody you know, because 1,000 is nothing in the internet world. 1,000 is absolutely nothing in the internet world. Let's get this sucker up to 100,000, 200,000. That would be awesome. And believe me, when it is at that point, I will actually be at the point where I could give you guys more of my time. I could give you more of my effort. You know, it seems crazy, but I'm building this thing to give people information. You know, I want to seed survival in your lives. So I need more people to show up so that I can seed survival into their lives as well. And then, in return, what will happen is this will, believe it or not, free up a lot of my time so that I can create more for you guys. That's my goal, is to give you more. And to give you more unpaid content that will teach you and make your life better. Not only that, but, you know, because I'm going to try to build a business around my blog and podcast, now I will not charge for my blog posts at cleversurvivalist.com, and I will not charge for my podcast episodes at theprepperpodcast.com. I will not do it. It's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. I know a lot of people do that. I'm not going to do that. I am going to build my business and my brand around the podcast and around the blog, okay? Well, I've enjoyed talking to you guys, and I want you to see me next week on The Prepper Podcast. You guys have a great week, and don't forget, go ahead and give me some comments. Take it easy, guys. Next week. Goodbye.